After a thorough review of the 4M4A1s, we came to a conclusion that there are uh, some advantages in the different rifles. And based on our check system, as you can see, I'm going to go through every single one. In packaging, JG doesn't score a check for box because it was just plain. Classic Army scores a check for their box because it's very nice looking. Mecha One scores a check as well for their print, and G&G, because it was inside out, didn't score a check. For the packaging accessories, JG gets a check for the battery and charger, and all the other stuff that's in it. Classic Army, because of the battery and charger as well, scores a check. Echo One scores a check, and G&G doesn't score a check because it doesn't come with battery and charger. The externalities of the gun, JG doesn't score a check on the plastic because it's obviously like the older version where it doesn't have any trademarks and it's gray, so it's kind of boring, a little dull. Classic Army has great plastic, the stuff that you're used to seeing with Classic Army. It's very nice texture to it, so it gets two checks, but it does have the old Armalite trademark. But regardless, it has two checks. Now Echo One also gets two checks because it's not like the JG version plastic that is gray. It is matte black, and it does have the Stag Arms trademark in it, which is a plus, something different. G&G also scores two checks on the plastic because of the texture. It's very well made. Now for the metal parts of the external, JG doesn't score any because it's the bottom plate of the pistol grip is the older version, Allen wrench key type, and the metal parts of it is matte black, but not enough to give it a check. Classic Army, on the other hand, does get a check for metal parts because it's matte black, and sort of like the things that you're used to with Classic Army externals. It's a very nice metal piece. And it does score a check because of the bottom plate having the large screw type. It allows you to adjust the motor a lot better. And so just like Classic Army, G&G also scores a check for the same thing. Unfortunately, I will be removing this check on G&G because when I went ahead and pulled back the charging handle, it didn't have the dust cover, and it was a non-functioning charging handle, not like the Echo Ones, the Classic Armies, or the JGs. But Echo One doesn't score a check because it does have the old Allen wrench type bottom plate, just like the JG does. Now for gearbox and motor, JG receives two checks because it has a 6mm gearbox, but it has metal bushings, metal gears, a lot of really good metal parts. Classic Army, on the other hand, doesn't score any because it had a 6mm gearbox, but it had plastic bushings, and it doesn't have the same type of internal parts as you would see on the higher end Classic Army. So it is a sport line, and the gearbox has sport line parts. Echo One, on the other hand, comes with three checks. We gave it three checks because the three checks pretty much represents the 8mm gearbox shell, the 8mm ball bearings that come with the rifle, as well as the motor that it came with. Overall, the gearbox and the motor on the Echo One is excellent, and it's already a platform that a lot of technicians would use to upgrade guns. G&G also gets two checks, and the reason why is because it has an 8mm gearbox, but it is a solid bushing, and it does have fairly good gears, but we're not going to count it against that, even though it's not as good, but it still gets two checks nonetheless. So the total for everything with all the rifles, the JG receives three checks, the Classic Army receives five checks, the Echo One receives an outstanding 7 checks, and the G&G receives 4 checks. Also, we did shooting and FPS rating on all the rifles, and we are going to be giving out a 2-check bonus to the rifle that has a very good overall shooting ability. And starting with the JG, it was shooting at 370 FPS with 15 rounds per second. The Classic Army shot at 305 FPS with 21 rounds per second. Now, the reason why the Classic Army was shooting very well at 21 rounds per second, obviously, it's kind of like a give and take, because of the lower FPS. It did shoot at a higher rate of fire. The Echo 1 came with 370 FPS and 17 rounds per second. The G&G shot at 320 FPS with 16 rounds per second. All of these rifles shot with 0.2 gram BBs with a LiPo battery that is a 10C discharge, 11.1 volt. The price of the JG is $140. The Classic Army is around $160. The Echo 1 is $175, and the G&G is $140. For overall shooting and value, the bonus is going to be given to JG. Now JG, instead of 3, will be given, because of the 2 check bonus, it receives a score of 5. So now our total score is 5 for JG, 5 for Classic Army, 7 for Echo 1, and 4 for G&G. Overall, the Echo 1 is a great gun for some of you beginners out there that are looking to play airsoft and start off with. Although the price is a bit stiff, it makes up for it with the extra accessories, hence the flash hider, the extra black flash hider. The Classic Army is around $160, which is $15 cheaper than the Echo 1. It does come with accessories, but the gearbox isn't as well. The JG is around $140. So overall value on the JG is pretty well as well. And the G&G is at $140, but it doesn't come with accessories. Keep in mind that if you were to buy a battery and a charger at your local airsoft store, it will cost around $30. So you are looking at spending $170 regardless. So total overall value, once again, for the JG is 5 checks, Classic Army is 5 checks, Echo 1 at 7 checks, and G&G at 4 checks. And here you have it.